I'm Helen Kim. You hear me? Okay. My name is Hyoin Kim. I am Communication Assistant of EAA Secretariat. I'd like to warmly welcome everyone who participated the workshop today. This is our third in-depth workshop of Youth Think Tank competition for EAA Flyways. How was yesterday? We talked about understanding global agenda for environment in webinar session, threats to migratory waterbirds and wetland, and impact on human in session 1, and opportunities and solutions for wetland conservation in session 2. Do you have any impressive information based on yesterday's sessions? Could you please share your impressive information? Okay, I will move to next slide. Yes, before we start, please kindly note that actually move to the next slide, please. Someone. Thank you. Before we start, please kindly note that this session is being recorded, as you can see. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please use chat box so that we can answer you shortly, or your question will be answered during the Q&A time. Next slide, please. Today's rundown is as follows, the schedule here. This workshop will be 2 hours and 15 minutes, including ice-breaking, speech, break time, and introduction of think tank competition and debriefing. Now, I'd like to warm up the atmosphere here. I prepared 3 questions, and I do need your answers. So now please turn on your camera so that I can see your answer. Could you please turn on your camera? I will ask 3 questions, and please show your answer like O or X on the screen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Question number 1. Could you please move to next slide, please? Thank you. Question number 1. I am making effort for saving the environment. As you see the picture on the slide, right? This is my Tumblr. Actually, it's here. Okay, this is my Tumblr. So I usually use my Tumblr for to not to use plastic. So if you have any special movement for environment, could you please say O or X, please? Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to pick one person. I saw um Charlie Gadoria from Philippines. I saw your O. So could you please share your actions, please?
Hi everyone. Again, I'm Mary from Philippines, and just like you, um, I always bring my tumbler whenever I go outside. But I am currently in the office, so we have a lot of mugs here and glasses, so I didn't bring mine. And whenever I purchase something, I always rethink if I really need that something before I purchase that. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you for sharing your special movement for environment. I'm sure that your tiny little actions will be huge positive effect to the environment in the future. And question number 2. I have been to wetland before. Actually, this is the picture of Suncheonma, where it is located in the Republic of Korea. I've been there with my family before. It was very nice experience for me. So how about you guys? Please show your answer. O or X? Oh, yes. Wow. There's many people who visited wetland before. I saw Kun La Yang. You show your answer O. Could you please share your experience?
Uh, yes, thank you so much for promoting me to sharing my experience here. Uh, Actually, I came from the wetland area, watershed area. I came from Inle Lake, the second largest lake of Myanmar. I live in the watershed area, so I several time went to the Inle Lake, the wetland area. Yeah, so they have floating current at there, and then I saw a lot of water bug. Yeah. Uh, it's very important for us or and important for animal and biodiversity around the lake. And then this wetland also important to our Myanmar electricity because our electricity mainly depend on this wetland area. Yeah, so we need to save them. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience with important informations as well. Thank you, and I wish I could visit there once in my life in the future.
Warmly welcome.
And thank you. And next question, question number 3. Have you ever seen any water birds? Please, uh, and these pictures, this migratory water birds is sandpiper, sand spoon, sorry, spoon-billed sandpiper. To be honest, I've never seen spoon-billed sandpiper before, but this is my supervisor's who is Vivian. Her favorite migratory water birds, so I picked this water migratory bird for showing you all. To give just brief explanatory of spoon-billed sandpiper, it is one of the key species of EAAFP flyways, and it is also the rarest shorebird and endemic to the East Asian Australasian flyway. Okay, and then now please show your answer, please. Oh, I saw Jacelyn C. You said yes. And could you please
Uh,
share your experience to see any water birds?
yes, during my last field survey, I actually surveying all the water birds feeding grounds on my project site. And one of my favorite water birds that I see is the black-tailed godwit, which I think is really cute. Yeah.
Yes, I know that it's really, really super cute. When I post some articles, I saw that birds frequently. So thank you for sharing your that information experience. Thank you for all who share your experience. I'm really appreciated. Now, Vivian will inform of think tank competition and debriefing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Charlene. I think we are all now awake a little bit, right? And yeah, glad that we have somebody to share their experience. So yeah, thank you very much and good job, Charlene. Um, okay, so before we start the section today, this is our last session for the first workshop. So for our activities is about the youth think tank competition. So I would like to first tell you more about in detail about this youth think tank competition for the EAA Flyway. And then we can go to more about the tips of how we can get this funding or get this into this competition with our trainer today, Maaike. So first of all, I will spend about like 10 to 15 minutes to talk to tell more about the details. So next slide, please. Yes, okay. As I mentioned that this think tank competition is separate. It's in two parts. The part one is the competition itself, which we wanted to encourage innovation and implementation or like taking actions by the youth. And we are focusing on three areas: the science, society, and the CPA. And for the competition itself, Even though you are just focusing on science or about the social issues, we also want you to include CPA elements in your in the project, because CPA is everywhere. If you do good science, if no one knows about what you're doing, that's nothing. It's not helping the conservation. So we need CPA activities everywhere. The second part is the capacity building. So that is what we are doing now. We help to increase or help you enhance your skills and knowledge about the conservation. So the first workshop we have yesterday and today is about the understanding global agenda on environmental protection and how youth can be engaged. And today we are going to focus more about the project planning and project proposal writing. The second workshop will be more about the practical implementation initiatives. For example, relating to the local community. We also will have a section about project management and fundraising. That will be really important because yesterday in the breakout section, we also discussed that one of the challenge or one of the needs that we need for the actions is resources. Then the last workshop will be about communication. As I said, CPA is everywhere. So we need communication to bring our project output to everyone, to the others, to understand what we have done. So we need about like some skills on storytelling and scientific communication. Also, we need to do some part of the project evaluation and impact measurements, so that we know how we can improve and how much impact our project bring to the for the conservation. Next, please. Okay, so let's focus more about the think tank competition itself. As I mentioned, we are focusing on the three fields: the science, society, and CPA. But note that because EAAFP, our mission is on the conservation of migratory water birds and wetlands within the EAA Flyway. So all the project proposal we are receiving from the competition will have to be implemented within the EAAFP and has to be related to the migratory water birds and wetlands. We are targeting young conservationists like many of you here. Those who are from green youth groups, local and international NGOs, young staff, and also university students. We are going to have two phases of this competition. The phase one will end within this year. We are going to collect and recall proposal for your innovation for conservation of migratory water birds and wetlands. It includes submission on our platform, which and also including 3 minutes of the video pitch. And then we will have a panel for judges to review and select 5 outstanding projects for the competition. Then next year, we are going to move on to the phase 2. The 5 finalist projects, they are going to implement with the awards, the small grant fund awarded to these 5 projects, so that they can give from 3 to 10 months for the implementation. After that, we will, at the end of the year, we will have an online presentation pitching and open forum Q&A section. And the winning team will be selected from these 5 finalists. Next, please. This is a general timeline for the competition. So we actually started the calling for the proposal since September 17th. And the deadline will be 17th November, which is about, less than two weeks from now. And the judging phase will be from the 1st to the 15th of December, and we will announce the 5 finalist projects around the Christmas time. After that, we will have about 10 months for the implementation of the finalist projects. And then in October 2022, we are going to select to have the final voting judging for the projects. So that means the 5 finalist projects will have to go for open voting and the judging by the panels. And then we will do the selection and the final announcement in October or November time in 2022. So the most exciting part is about the prize. First of all, in phase 1, the 5 finalist award, they will be given awarded $3,000 each, plus including mentorships. I didn't mention yesterday, but 3 of the speakers who were the presenters in the section 1, they were the mentors for the 5 finalist group. And the phase 2, for the overall winner, we have that team or the individual will be granted as a EAFP Youth Ambassador. And after discussion with the EAAFP CEPA working group, we also the chair also agreed to give 1 position to the winning team as to sit in the CEPA working group. Therefore, it's kind of like a direct way for the youth to be sitting in the EAFP working group and involved in some of the decision-making process. And then after that, we hope to have to seek for opportunity for the winning team to attend EAFP or international events. But this really subject to the COVID situation for traveling and the opportunity, because right now the schedules and events are still changing. It's still quite uncertain because of the COVID. Next, please. Okay, so for the eligibility for the applicants, all the team members has to be, because we are looking for youth, so you have to be between the age of 18 to 29, and the nationality has to be within one of the countries in the EAA Flyway. It doesn't really need to be partner countries of EAFP, because we still have 4 countries not yet as our partners. But if it is within the EAFP Flyway, that's also eligible. And then you can also team up with people. So a maximum of 5 people will be allowed for 1 team. And you can also invite people from other flyways to join, but the number of people from other flyways cannot be exceeding the half of the number of the members from the EAA Flyway within a team. And then all the members must be in early career in the conservation field, and the years of the working in this field is no more than 5 years. And also university students are eligible. Next, please. For the eligibility for the projects, as I mentioned, because we are EAFP with the mission for working within our EAF Flyway, the project has to be implemented within the EAF Flyway and related to migratory water birds and wetlands. And all the projects needs to be it needs to include CEPA elements. The projects needs to be more than 3 months and no more than 10 months for the implementation. The applicants has the capacity to implement the projects within next year. So if you cannot commit to implement the projects next year between January and October, that means even though your projects were selected, you still cannot be awarded with the small grant fund. And all the project implementation has to follow the regulations of the projects where the project is implemented. And only 1 project's proposal can be submitted by the 1 individual or from each team. The proposed projects has to be cannot be part of an existing project or study or continuing past project or study. we do not, as I said, because it cannot be part of the existing project or study. So it's kind of like a new project. So no financial support at the beginning, but we also encourage you to do fundraising for the projects during the implementation period. The proposal has to be developed and written by the applicant and has to be in English. The implementation, the incomplete application will not be eligible for to enter the competition. And finally, the awarded applicants has to implement the project with the awarded prize, the amounts in phase 1. So that is all for the briefing. And if you have any questions, please also raise your hands, and I'm going to answer the questions now. Any questions? Okay. Yes, I see hands from Frashers.
Hi. Yeah, this is Prasad.
Hi.
Hi, I'm from India, and I would like to know whether I'm eligible to participate in this think tank competition.
Yes, I understand. India is overlapping with the EAA Flyway, but unfortunately, according to the EAFP, India is still not within the EAA Flyway. So I'm sorry, India is not eligible. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay. If not, you can still type in questions. Okay. Okay. So if you later on within this training workshop, or even after this training workshop, you can send us message or leave a message here, or send us an email from the flywayuforum@gmail.com where you receive the email. So yeah. Okay, without further ado, I would like to pass it on to the kickstart of the section for the training to Maaike. So next slide, please, that one. All right. So yeah, I would like to introduce our honorable trainer for today. So we are happy to have Ms. Maaike Manten, from a trainer of Conservation Leadership Program from BirdLife International. Maaike is trained as a political scientist in Amsterdam from the Netherlands. She started working for BirdLife International in the year 2000. And since then, she has worked for BirdLife in the UK, Kenya, Fiji, Rwanda, and as an institutional fundraiser for Africa and the Pacifics. And later on, as the regional implementation team leader for the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund. Maaike has also been working with the Conservation Leadership Program since 2009, providing project design, proposal writing, and fundraising trainings to young conservationists in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. She is also the co-author of the Institutional Fundraising for Conservation Projects, the book. And you can find the link of this in the e-program that we shared with you earlier. So now I would like to pass it on to Maaike to be the training, to chair the training of this section. Maaike, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. Let me share my screen. And can everybody see my screen? All right. And hear me well?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Unfortunately, as soon as this training started, the power went off here in Rwanda. So I am currently working off the uninterrupted power supply, my backup. which will keep going for a while, but I sincerely hope the power will come back in time. If I at some point suddenly pop off, then there's nothing I can do about it. But we'll find another way then to relay what I want to tell you today in another way. Today I want to talk to you about project planning, proposal writing, and pitching. So Vivian already introduced me. I'll just very quickly confirm. This is my email address. I'm going to give you this PowerPoint also after the training, so you can look at everything again at your own time and your own pace. And you'll find my email here. So in case you have any questions that you can't ask today, then always feel free to send me an email afterwards. I am based in Rwanda at the moment, hence the power cut. But I've been working in many places, as Vivian said. As a fundraiser, I've been writing about 500 applications. So I've got a lot of experience in proposal writing. Some of them were not funded, I must admit, but some of them were. And I learned lessons both from the successes and from the failures. As the team leader for the regional implementation team for Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, this was like a liaison office between a donor, the CPF, and the grantees in these three hotspots: Eastern Afro-Montane hotspot, which is here in Africa, the Mediterranean hotspot, and the Guinean forest of West Africa. And in that context, I have reviewed about 1,500 applications. So I have seen a lot of proposals in my lifetime. And then, of course, yes, I've been a trainer in about 15 training programs I've done so far with participants from about 35 countries. And I'm very, very happy now to be with you today along the East Asia, Australasia Flyway. As Vivian also mentioned, here's the manual, the book that we always use. I always have it here on my desk. It is available in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. So pick your choice. It's for free. You can download it from this website, and it will explain in more detail quite a number of the things I will be talking about today. So please feel free to use that as a reference document when you start writing your proposals. As Vivian said, we're doing this training in the context of your think tank competition for the East Asia Australasia Flyway. And there is an online application form that you will need to complete before the 17th of November. And this is what it looks like. So it has a number of tabs, and under each of these tabs, it has a number of questions. So while I'm going to give you this general training about project planning, proposal writing, and pitching, I will try to do this in the context of your application form that you need to complete, so that it makes it as easy and practical and tangible for you as possible. I'm going to give you 10 top tips on how to do this best, filling in this application form in the context of the proposal that you want to submit to the think tank competition. But as much as they will be specific, these lessons learned that I will give to you, these 10 top tips, you will also be able to apply them for other projects that you want to raise money for and other proposals you want to write. So it's also already an introduction to your second training, which is about fundraising. And normally I do these trainings in 2 weeks. And today I have 2 hours. So you can imagine it's going to be very fast and furious. I'll try not to speak too fast because that makes no sense. If you can't follow me, then my training will become a failure. So I'm not going to talk too fast, but I will address a lot of issues. There are a lot of things that will come up in this training. So that's why I'm going to give you this PowerPoint after the training, so you can actually look at it again at your own time. If I go too fast, then you can look at it and go a little bit slower, etc. In the meantime, if you want to make notes, then please make notes. And if you want to ask me questions, I will break at some points for you to ask me questions, either through the chat box or directly. All right. as my original language is Dutch, so I'm from the Netherlands, so English is also not my first language, but I do hope that what I say, you can understand it. And if not, then please raise your hand and say, this one I really didn't understand. So always feel free to stop me if you have to. So 10 top tips I'm going to give you. Project planning, proposal writing, and pitching. So the first 5 tips I'm going to give you are going to be about project planning. So here comes tip number 1. There's also a handout, by the way, which already has these 10 top tips that you have seen from the email that the EAA team has been sending you. So I follow the same 10 tips that are already on your handout. Tip number 1 starts with something you should not do. A lot of people start writing their proposals with what they want to do. They start already thinking in terms of solutions. I'm going to do a management plan. I'm going to raise awareness of the people. I'm going to do ABCD. But that's not right. What you need to do is to start with a problem. There has to be a conservation problem that you're trying to address. Every project that you will design in your career as a young conservationist, and later on, like me, as an old conservationist, is what is the problem you're going to try to address? You start with a problem. If there is no problem, there's also no need for a project. You have to have a conservation problem, something that's happening in the here and the now that is not right. Birds are dying, wetland is disappearing, people are shooting my water birds. There is a problem that you try to address, and you really need to find out what that problem is. And you want to ask, when you do your problem analysis, you want to know everything about this problem. In addition to power cuts, I also have some very noisy dogs. You want to know exactly what the problem is that you're trying to address. So you ask, why is this problem happening? And why is this problem happening? Remember yesterday, Sayam was talking about hunting in the village. And he said, I knew there was hunting, but I had to know why was that hunting happening? Were people hunting for food? Were they hunting for money? Were they hunting for fun or for cultural purposes? Because only when you know why, exactly why something is occurring, then you can start thinking about solutions. How are you going to address it? What are you going to do to fix that problem? So you always start with a problem, and you want to define it as specifically as possible. And you have to be realistic. If you have $3,000 and you have 10 months time, you can't fix the whole problem in the whole flyway. So make your problem analysis specific and realistic. What is the exact problem you're going to do? In your application form, there's a section on rationale. And under that section of rationale, there again is a subsection on rationale, which is where you describe this problem. You have maximum 300 words to do it. And as Vivian said, all your projects have to relate to the migratory waterbird flyway. So you have to address the problem that occurs within that context of the East Asia Australasia flyway. So when you describe your problem, put it in that box and describe it in as much detail as possible. And Dingley yesterday mentioned a number of problems that occur along the flyway. He talked about habitat loss, he talked about invasive species, he talked about hunting and trapping of birds, he talked about the impacts of climate change, he talked about the fact that many sites are still unprotected, and he talked about that there are still large gaps in evidence base and science. Other speakers yesterday also mentioned other problems. So there are many problems occur along the flyway, and it is now up to you when you start designing your project, you're doing your project design, your project plan, you write your proposal to define exactly which is the problem that you're going to address within the flyway in this particular project. So my first tip is describe the exact problem you aim to address in this project. Exactly. And don't make this too big. And the manual will describe and help you identifying the exact problem. There's a whole chapter in this book about doing a problem analysis. So I definitely recommend you to look at that. Okay. Tip number 2. A lot of people, when they have defined their problem and written it nicely down in their rationale box in their application form, they then forget about it all over and start again with like what it is that they want to do. They still want to do their management plan. They still want to do their awareness raising, but they've forgotten what their original problem was. This again is wrong. You don't do that. You have to make sure that whatever you do in your project plan and in your proposal and in implementation, everywhere links to that original problem that you have identified, because that is what you want to solve. There's no point in doing a project if it's not solving the problem that you have identified. So keep that link. And again, we said you have to be really specific about the problem you're going to identify and that you're going to address. You also have to be really specific about how you're going to go about it. What exactly are you going to do? Don't make it sound as if you're going to figure it out along the way. You want to have a convincing story to your donors that you know exactly what you need to do to fix this problem. And this everything applies, all this sort of like the link that you need to keep with your problem applies to the purpose of your project, the objectives of your project, the activities of your project, and the methodology of your project. And these are the 4 main questions that are being asked again now in your application form. Still on the project rationale, the first box was about the problem. The second box is about purpose and objectives. And the third box you can see is about methods and activities. All of this need to address the problem that you have identified. So your purpose is really the new situation that you will achieve at the end of your project. So you have a problem now, and then the purpose of your project is to fix that problem. And the way you phrase your purpose is then at the end of my project, the problem will be fixed. There will be a new situation where this particular project is not happening. So, for example, if the problem is that the population of spoon-billed sandpipers, which I was happy to see the picture at the start of this training, the population of spoon-billed sandpipers at the amazing wetland in my country is declining rapidly. That is the problem that you're trying to address. You've seen this with your own eyes. Every year, when you go to this wetland, you see the number of spoon-billed sandpipers becoming less and less and less. So then your solution or the purpose, the new situation that you want to see at the end of your project is that at the end of your project, the decline of this population of spoon-billed sandpipers at this amazing wetland will be reduced. In this case, we want to reduce it with 10%. You want to reduce the decline of the spoon-billed sandpipers. Of course, ideally, you want this population to not decline at all. You want it to be stable or even growing. But again, you have to be realistic. You have $3,000, you have 10 months time. So really, what can you do? Don't overpromise what you can deliver in your project. Because if you overpromise, you'll probably underdeliver at the end, which will be bad for everybody. You won't be happy, your donor won't be happy, so don't do that. If you be realistic, then everything's okay. These people understand what it is they can do with this money in this timeline. So it looks much better. And the best way to phrase your purpose, just also for your understanding, but also so that your readers and your donors and your reviewers do understand it, is you start actually with saying, at the end of this project, so 10 months and $3,000 later, and I will have implemented my whole project plan, then this will be achieved. This will be my new situation. The decline of the population of spoon-billed sandpipers at this particular site will have been reduced with 10%. That is what you sign up to. That is what you promise. So this is what we call your project purpose. It's really the opposite of your problem. The problem was bad, the solution and your purpose is good. Your objectives are the individual changes you have to make to achieve your purpose. So, to reduce the decline of the population of these spoon-billed sandpipers, there may be 3 things you have to do, and you have found out this through your problem analysis. When you did your problem analysis and said, okay, I noticed these populations are going down. Why are they going down? Remember, we asked you to ask, why is this happening? And you said, okay, there's hunting. So I know people are shooting these birds or trapping them. We also know that people don't really care. They just look at these birds as food. They don't actually understand the value of these birds as migrants, as contributors to the ecosystem, as indicators for the wider environment, etc. And there's also maybe something to do with research that you actually don't really know exactly how much of these birds are dying. You can see it, you've seen it, observed it over the years, but you really need to do some more research about the actual populations. How many are there today, next month, next month, next month? So there are 3 things you want to do in this project, and these which we call our objectives. You want to do your research, you want to reduce the hunting, and you want to raise local awareness. And you can see they link exactly to the 3 things that Vivian was mentioning about science, society, and SEPA. Objectives in your application form have to be SMART. They call it SMART. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before about SMART objectives, but it's actually explained in the guidelines. It says it has to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be achievable, they have to be relevant to the problem that you're going to address, and they have to be time-bound. So when you define these objectives, these changes that you're going to make to achieve your purpose, which is the solution to your problem, you have to phrase them SMART. So a non-SMART objective could sound like hunting will be reduced. That's clear, but it's not specific. It's not measurable. We don't know whether it is achievable because it doesn't give an indication with how much you will reduce the hunting. It's not time bound. It doesn't say anything about what it is relevant because we really want to stop, reduce this hunting. So relevance is covered, but the rest we don't know. A smart way of saying this is that hunting of the spoon-billed sandpipers by the local communities at the amazing wetland, which is already much more specific, will be reduced by 10% by September 2022. You can see the difference. It is much more specific. It is much more measurable because now we say it is 10%. And it has a time limit to it by September 2022. This is when we want to have achieved this. It's still relevant, and it is much more achievable because we said we can only do 10% of this thing. It still requires science because you still want to know what is your baseline, how many birds are hunted today, how many people are hunting today, what are the number of incidences of hunting. So you need to get all this information together for your science and your evidence. You still want to know whether this 10% is achievable because you have only limited money and time. Can you actually do that? Depends, of course, on your baseline. If your baseline is big, then 10% will also be big. If your baseline is relatively small, 10% is also relatively small. So you need to think about that, and you will need to define exactly what is achievable. And then, of course, you need to think about how am I really going to do this? What is the best method to do this? What is the evidence? What is the best practices? What have other people done in these places? And Siam also mentioned that yesterday. Use the evidence. Don't try to think everything up by yourself. Don't, try to make it up along the way. Use the evidence and apply it locally to what is relevant to you locally. About methods and activities, I really want to get rid of this thing, sorry. You again need to think about what exactly the donor is asking you to write here, and the donor actually explains it very well. They want to tell you who is going to do what, when, how, and for whom. They say you want the name of the activity, the methodology, how you're going to do it, the timeline, when are you going to do it, the target audience, for whom are you going to do it, and linked to your project outputs, what actually will you achieve. So again, be specific about this. Make sure your method and activities link to your purpose and objectives, and your purpose and objectives link to the problem you're trying to address. As Vivian said, 3 things that the donor wants to see in this whole context of purpose, objectives, methods, and activities: science, society, and SEPA. So try to make sure that whenever you do your project plan, you have components of each of these things in your project. My tip is, when you do this, again, you have limited time, you have limited money, and you can't figure things out along the way. So use evidence for defining your project plan. And there's a very good website called Conservation Evidence that will give you a lot of information about best practices and things that have proven to be working. And then you use that and apply it locally. So in summary, your project plan, you look at the problem that you have identified. You then keep asking why. Why are these things happening? You say, well, one problem we have is we don't actually really know how much. We've seen it, but we don't know how much the actual data are. We know that people are hunting. And again, you can keep asking, why are they hunting? Are they hunting for food or whatever? So you need to know that as well. And you want to know why this happening is because maybe people don't understand the value of these birds. You remember yesterday, Jia Kim, who was talking about marine environment, and she did exactly this. For those of you who attended that training yesterday, she said, I wanted to first find out what is the problem. And the problem was people were not aware of what was going on in the marine environment. They were living maybe in the inland. They didn't actually see it with their own eyes. They were not exposed to the problems. It was sort of far away, etc. And it's only then, when she figured out what the problems were, that she started to think about her solutions, her activities. What was she going to do? So she was going to do these online trainings, etc., and seminars. And then, so you start with the problem, ask why, and then you come up with your solutions. And your solutions reflect the problems. So your purpose is the opposite of your problem. At the end, the decline of the population will be addressed, it will be reduced. And your objectives will deal with the main problems you have identified when you asked, why is this happening? And then you phrase them smartly. Put in specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So these are just some examples. Don't copy and paste this in your own project, but this is sort of how it could look like. And you have science, society, and SEPA in your project plan. All right. Take a breath. Tip number 3. Also, under your application form on project rationale, they will ask for deliverables. So we've done problem, we've done purpose and objectives, we've done methods and activities, and now we are on the deliverables. And the donor wants specifically deliverables with relating to SEPA, which is communication, education, and public awareness, also includes participation, capacity building, etc. And they ask for a plan on how to share project results, communicate them. Because as Vivian said, you can do all the research you do, but if you don't communicate it to the rest of the world, what's the point? So you want to do this. Yesterday, again, a lot of these things were already mentioned. So I was just listening and thinking, yeah, exactly. Sayam was mentioning really local deliverables. He was going to do these campaigns with the local people. He was going to set up village conservation groups, which were very locally appropriate tools and deliverables that would help him achieve his project purpose and objectives in his particular situation. Jia Kim, as I mentioned, she was much more looking at larger online outreach to wider audiences through the internet, videos, newsletters, seminars. That was all a very different level. You can see, one was very local, on the ground in the village. The other is much more online for wider audiences. Mark, who was from the Global Youth Biodiversity Groups Network, they were looking at high-level stuff. They were going to the CBD meetings and have events and meetings there. Again, very, very different. So my only tip here, which I want to say, is there's a lot of information out there how to do SEPA and how to get these products, what type of products you can use. The main thing is that they are appropriate to what you want to achieve. If you want to do something really, really local, don't go out and make a big website that nobody's going to look at. Or if you want to do something much more high level, then don't do something very local that only maybe 5 people will see. So make sure that what you do on the SEPA, in terms of the deliverables and products that you're going to make sure they will actually help you again achieve your project purpose and objectives to fix your problem. Everything has to be connected. Tip number 4. Indicators. Indicators are difficult. So I'm going to give you again a few examples, but indicators are difficult. What you really want to do when you talk about indicators is find a way to measure that what you say you're going to do, especially at the level of your purpose and your objectives, that what you're going to do, you can actually measure if you're achieving it. This is really what you want to do. If you say, I'm going to do this in my project, this is what I'm going to achieve in my purpose, of overall solution that I'm going to achieve, or in the terms of your specific objectives, the individual changes you're going to make in terms of science, society, and SEPA, make sure they become measurable. They're already measurable because you made them smart, right? Your objectives, you already made them smart. Now the question is, how do I really measure that I'm making progress and I'm achieving these things? How, for instance, will we measure that by September 2022, the hunting of the spoonbill sandpiper by the local people in the amazing wetland will be reduced by 10%? How am I going to measure this? Because it's easy to say, but how can I tell you, or how can you see that this is actually happening? So an indicator, again, will give you quality, quantity, and time in a way to measure the achievement of your purpose and objectives. In this case, hunting of spoonbill sandpipers by local people will be reduced by 10% by September 2022. How can I measure this? Okay, I can say our bird monitors will count all the hunting incidents at the wetland, and they will notice that these hunting incidents will decline with at least 10% starting from month 6. Because first 6 months, you'll do your campaigns and your awareness raising and your training and whatever you need to do in terms of alternative income generating activities for these hunters. So all of that will happen. And then at some point, you will start to notice hunting incidents will go down. It's from month 6. And how is that going to happen? My bird monitors who are out there in the field, they're there anyway because they're counting birds, because I'm doing my science. I want to know everything about these populations. They start with the baseline. Month 1, we have 500 birds. Month 2, they might still go down to 400. Month 3, they go down. But then they can see the hunting incidents are declining. Less and less, fewer and fewer birds are being killed by hunting. Or perhaps they don't count the hunting incidents, but they count the number of people who are actually doing the hunting. And they say, we'll notice that the number of people, which started with 50 at the beginning, there were 50 people hunting at this wetland. After our campaigns, etc., what we've done in these first 6 months, we can now see 5 people have stopped hunting. Now there are only 45 people who are doing it, which means we have achieved our target because we have reduced hunting or hunters by 10%. So there are different ways of measuring this. You can count the hunters, you can count the hunting incidents, you can count the birds that are killed by hunting. There are various ways of measuring this, and it's up to you to define the best ways of doing it. You can have more than one indicator for everything for each objective, no problem. But make sure that that's what they do. They measure what you're saying that you're going to achieve. Then this is not very straightforward. Again, practice makes perfect. So do this again and again, come up with new ideas, talk to each other, like, how can we really measure this? And define this together with your team members. Also, again, look in the book, because the book also gives a few examples about this. The key thing is that for every indicator, you also identify a means of verification, which is the proof or the evidence, again, of your indicator. So where your indicator measures whether you are achieving your purpose or your objective, your means of verification provides the proof that this is true. And this evidence could be anything, sort of tangible materials that actually show that this is truly happening. So for instance, if hunting is illegal and all the hunting that is happening is reported to the police, then police records will show that there will be a decline in hunting incidences reported by the police. Or if you have a monitoring system that works on your mobile phone, whatever, and then at the end, you have put all of this in your monitoring sheets and they can see this decline. You can see that I have had all these observations and the monitoring report shows the trend going downwards. Find ways that I can look at, because I can't go into the wetland and look at these things with my own eyes, but show that there is a document or pictures of a video or your remote sensing, your drone reports, whatever, that show that this is actually happening. Proof or evidence. Because an indicator is only valuable if it can be verified. We call them objectively verifiable indicators. They have to be objectively verified. If you look at it, I look at it, somebody else outside looks at it, the boss of the CBD looks at it, they see the same things. They're objectively verifiable. And that is because there is proof and evidence that this is happening. Am I saying I'm going fast? I give you a lot of different information today in these 2 hours. So don't worry if this is all a little bit sort of vague still, but look at it again later, look at the book, look at other proposals and see what is meant with these indicators. The key thing for you to remember is include quality, quantity, and time, because that will allow you to actually indicate. In this case, our bird monitor will count the hunting incident. The hunting incidents are my quality. This is what I'm measuring. At least 10% is the quantity at which I want this number to go down. Starting from month 6 is time. Same for the next one. Number of people that are hunting is my quality. This is what I'm measuring. From 50 to 45, quantity. So the first one is quality, quantity. And then after 6 months, time. So make sure your indicators include quality, quantity, and time. And that for each indicator, you have proof, means of verification. And describe that in that section in the application form about indicators. I'm going to measure it this way, and this is where you can find the evidence. That will be a perfect way to describe your indicators. And all these tips are for you to do this application form in the best way possible, so you will get your money to fix the problem that you're trying to address. Conservation evaluation is a whole toolkit on how to do project monitoring for small grants. Has a lot of information in it, so have a look at that. My last tip on project planning. So this is about stakeholders. Again, this is the last section in that whole tab in your application form about project rationale. And it's really about trying to find out with whom you need to work together to make your project a success. You're never alone. You're not the only ones working in this area. You're not the only ones living in this area. There are other stakeholders that you need to take into consideration. So three types of stakeholders that you need to think about. People who have an interest in your project, like conservationists, researchers and students, young people, the government, etc. And yesterday, for Oscar and Jonathan really mentioned women. Don't forget women in this context. Very interesting stakeholder, because when you talk about natural resources, women play a very, very strong role in the management and use of these natural resources. So those are the people who have an interest in your project. There are also people who may be affected by your project. If you want to change something, who do you need to involve? If you want to do teaching, or if you want to change the behavior of a certain company to stop polluting the water, if you want to work with your hunters in the local communities, these people will be affected by your project. You want to change their behavior somehow. So yesterday, for instance, Misha mentioned on the mudflats, the fishermen. It's the fishermen on the one hand were the competitors with the shorebirds for food, but she said they're also collaborators. They also have the same interest, because if something bad would happen to that mudflat, it would affect the birds, but it would also affect the fishermen. So the fishermen can be your partners, your stakeholders in this project. And then, of course, there are people who can influence your project, people who have decision-making powers, people who own the land that you're working in, the management authorities of the wetland where you want to work. And yesterday, for instance, Budiman mentioned local village authorities. He said, you know, I needed to go to these local villages to get permission, to get their input and buy-in, and because they are the boss. So there's nothing I can do there without their buy-in into this project. So he wanted to consult them and ask them for permission. So think about these stakeholders in your project. Not everybody is a stakeholder, you know, so really think about people who have an interest in your project, could be affected by your project, or can influence your project. And then describe who they are and how you're going to engage them in your project. What will be their role? And this is very, very important, because you can't do everything on your own. You have to work with other people, and you will be able to achieve more impact by engaging these stakeholders. Focus on the relevant stakeholders. Again, you have limited time. You can't do everything with everybody. Focus on the relevant stakeholders that you need to work with to achieve more impact and make your project a success. And again, I put in a link about some best practices about how to engage stakeholders in your project. So at this point, I just wanted to ask, is there any questions? I'm sorry, I can't see the questions anymore because my second screen has collapsed. Are there any questions at this point? If
Yeah, mirror links maybe.
Can anybody facilitate this? Yes. Are there any questions in the chat box or anywhere else?
Yes, so don't feel shy to raise questions.
This is your chance.
Yes.
This is your chance to ask anything and everything you always wanted to know about project planning and project design. I'm really sorry, my power is still not back. Yes, I can hear somebody.
Kasaf, you have a questions, right? I see two.
Hi. Yeah. Hello, ma'am. I need a question. I have a question in methodology part.
Yes.
I want to know whether how to mention the statistical things in the statistical analysis in the methodology part.
Right. Right. So for this particular application form, for which I understand, unfortunately, you are not eligible. But in this particular form, really what they want to know is how you are going to make sure you're going to achieve these objectives. So what are your activities and the methodologies? If you say, I'm going to do science, what are your scientific methodologies? What are you going to do? Transacts? Are you going to do remote monitoring? Are you going to, you know, do state pressure response type of monitoring? So it's more about the way you're going to do your research activities, and the way you're going to do your SEPA activities, and the way you're going to do your society activities. Are you going to use best practices? What are these best practices? How do you know this is going to work in the context of your particular project? Statistics, of course, is one way of doing things. It's one way of looking at the results, especially when it talks about trends and stages and trends. So that can definitely be one of the methodologies that you're going to use. You say, I'm going to collect all this data every month, and then I'm going to put them in my statistical program, and then I'm going to run all sorts of models on this, etc. So it could be one of your methodologies when you talk about science. Statistics, of course, also very good when you talk about baselines and trends. So, but again, you only have very few words in this particular application form, so there's not a lot you can say about it. In this case, I would really focus on when the question is about activities and methodology, who's going to do what, how, why, when, and then refer to best practices in terms of why you have chosen that methodology for your particular activity and objectives. I hope that answers your question. If you do a proper science application for a proper science donor, which is really all about science, and your whole proposal and project is about getting science done, getting evidence, then of course you can expand a lot more about all these methodologies and your statistics and your programming. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Maaike. And we have the second hands raised up from Thura.
Thank you, Maaike, for your very helpful presentation. And could you please explain more about the conservation evidence? And in the proposal, where should I include about the conservation evidence? I understand that it's about the references in writing our scientific proposal like that, or?
Yeah. So conservation, thank you for that question. Conservation evidence is a website, and it combines all sort of research that has been done on how to best do conservation. And it will give a lot of information and papers that, you know, otherwise might not be have access to about the best ways of doing things. And it is all organized by topic. So if you say, I want to reduce hunting on wetlands for birds, you can sort of type in keywords and you will get the papers that say, all right, this has been done in South America. This is the methodology they use. These are the results they achieved. You can get a paper maybe about this has been done in India or in China, and this is what has been done. This is the way they did it, and this is what they achieved. And then you can learn from reading those documents about, all right, so rather than me thinking up my whole methodology myself or the way of doing this myself, I can actually learn and say, maybe this way of doing it is not so relevant in my local context. But what they've done there, what is described in this paper, can actually be very relevant for my project. And then you can think about it and say, how can I learn from this paper, this science, this evidence that has been provided in this peer-reviewed paper, and apply it in my project. So for instance, here in Africa, when we talk about income generating activities, people always want to do beekeeping. Beekeeping is the biggest thing here. But beekeeping doesn't work everywhere in every situation. So beekeeping sometimes works and it works very well, and sometimes it doesn't. There are many, many papers written about best practices on beekeeping. What are the things that you need in the context? What are the things you need to do? Which stakeholders do you need to involve? What are the best types of beehives in different habitats that you can use? How do you make sure that the chimpanzees don't raid your beehives? How do you make sure the ants don't raid your beehives? And all of this conservation evidence already exists. It's out there. You don't have to make the same mistakes. You can use those papers that are available on that website and then think of like, all right, knowing all these things have already been tested by other people, I'm going to start from a higher level. I don't have to start from the beginning and think of everything myself and make all the mistakes myself. All these mistakes have already been made, successes have already been achieved. I'm starting from here. And now I'm going to apply this in my project. And we all know we have no time to waste, right? The world is crashing all around us. Many problems are occurring. So we can't waste any more time in trying to find out everything by ourselves. We have to get better and better and better at what we're doing all the time. And the best way of doing this is by learning from others, and then use that as a basis to continue.
Thank you, Maaike.
Cool.
There is a follow-up. I think it's kind of like a follow-up question from this good one. It's from Mitaf. He asked it, how do we know that methods used is the best to practice, like is the best practice, while we have never done it before? And you know, there are 1,000 good examples to follow. How to pick one?
Yes. And again, that's why you should not do these things alone, right? That's why maybe you need your stakeholders to help you with this. And your stakeholders could, for instance, be experts in this field, people from the university, lecturers who know about this stuff and who can help you define what the best methodology is. Your conservation NGOs who have already done similar projects and who know about what you should and should not do. So again, as much as there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot, I agree, you also then need to find the people around you in your team, your advisors, your mentors, to help you find your way through all that information. Because you're right, even just Googling it, you'll find lessons learned about everything everywhere. But it's really, yeah, you have to swim. And of course, you know, even by looking at all these things, you learn. So, you know, I can't give you the one targeted paper that is giving the answers to all your questions. By going through these papers that are relevant to your topic, you will always learn new things and make you think about other ways of doing things. But to help you focus a bit, I would say if you have no idea where to start, then ask somebody who does. Ask experts in the field, whether they're in the university or in the NGO sector or in the government or whatever. Don't do this alone. Use your stakeholders and your partners.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Maaike, for the great replies, and I hope it's answering your questions. So yeah, you can keep flowing questions, and we are going to do breakout groups, right?
Yes, so I'm going to explain what we're going to do next, which is a jigsaw on project design. So we're going to do this in breakout groups, and this is how it works. Remember, we said we have a purpose, which is what we aim to achieve by the end of this project, which is the solution to the problem that we have identified. Then we said we're going to make 1, 2, 3 objectives, which are all defined in a smart way, which are the individual changes that we want to make. Then we said we're going to identify indicators, quality, quantity, and time, with their means of verification. We said we have to do activities that say who, what, why, when, combined with a methodology that is based on science and best practices, etc. We talked about partners, and we talked about deliverables and products. So there are 8 empty cells in the table, and there are 8 cards in yellow on the left. And what you're going to do in your breakout groups is you're going to put the right cards in the right place. And I'm going to give you one example. This card said by the end of this project, the conservation status of the amazing wetland will be improved. it was already given away because it started by the end of this project, which we said is this is how you phrase your purpose. So that card goes into that box. And you in your breakout groups are going to put the other cards in the right place in the other boxes. My esteemed colleagues from EAFP will going to organize you in the groups, and you're going to get about 14 minutes to do this. If you're very, very quickly finished, then take a little break and stretch your arms and legs and drink some water and shake your head. But I want you to be back here in 14 minutes, and then we'll see what it should have looked like. So go into your breakout groups. We're doing this on Mural, and then I expect you back at 30 minutes past the hour. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, great. I looked at some of the groups. Most of you got it perfectly right. There was one that got slightly mixed up, but this is what it should have looked like. I'm going to take this away. It won't go away. The purpose by the end of the project, I've already given you that. The objective was SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And it said after 6 months, 75 students will be actively engaged. It's one of the objectives that I want to achieve in this project. How was I going to measure that? I'm going to look, I can see, I can count that this is happening. The 75 people are actively engaged. I can measure that there have been 10 cleanup days with 75 people included, and they have picked 1,000 kilograms of plastic. This is quality, quantity, and time as an indicator showing that this objective is being achieved. And the means of verification, everybody got that right. This is the proof. There are pictures that these kids were at work. We made all the children sign the attendance list, so we have that. We weighed the kilos of plastic that we picked up, and then we sent it to the plastic recycling factory, and they signed a receipt that they received 1,000 kilos. So all of that is proof that this has been achieved. Our activity, we said who, what, when, etc. So we said in the first month maybe was about setting up the project. In months 2 to 6, we were going to do the training and tell them all about the importance of these birds. It's one of the activities that we were going to implement to achieve objective 1. There were more activities. The way it is counted, this is activity 1.1, there may be activity 1.2, 1.3, etc. This is one of the activities. And this is what we were going to put here under the activity section in the box. The methodology, again, everybody got it right. We're going to find the best ways and means of doing this, the best practices, because we already know that this will achieve the best results, doing a mixture of things. Our partners are the teachers, and our deliverable will be training module. And there will be other deliverables as well. We'll have photos, we'll have videos, we'll have all sorts of things. These are just examples. So well done for getting that right. I think there was one little bit between the objective and the activity where people got a little bit mixed up. I thought people would get mixed up between objective and indicators, but you were really, really good at that. So I have no fear that you're going to do things right in your application form. So now we're going to talk about proposal writing. So 3 tips about proposal writing. Tip number 6. What is the first thing you're going to do before you start writing your proposal? This is the most important thing you will learn today, because this is where most people go wrong. And the first thing you do before starting writing your proposal, once you've got your design right, you know what your problem is, you know what your solution is going to be, you know your purpose and your objectives and how you're going to do that. So all your project planning you have already done. Now, normally you do all of that outside of your application form. You do your project design separately. Then you translate this into a proposal. And what you need to do always when you start writing a proposal is read the guidelines. And this is so important because a lot of people do not read the guidelines. So they may not be eligible, or what they think they were going to do may not be eligible, or they're filling in the wrong form, or they missed the deadline. So first thing you do always is read the guidelines. The guidelines are, the link is here. Fortunately, also Vivian basically already talked you through all of this at the beginning of this session. But still, go back and read the guidelines. And then the most important thing is to actually stick to them. Don't think these guidelines are written for others and they don't apply to you. They do apply to you and you have to stick to them. And I'll give you some statistics because we were talking about statistics before the jigsaw. About 50% of applications that go to small grant donors, such as the Rufford small grants, or the Mohammed bin Zayed small grants, or the Conservation Leadership Program small grants, 50% at least, if not almost 60–70%, gets rejected in the first screening on eligibility and sticking to the guidelines. 2 out of 3 of the applications I looked at when I was the regional implementation team leader for the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, 2 out of 3 of the proposals that we would get were rejected just because people did not stick to the guidelines. They would write a proposal, but it was maybe doing the wrong thing in the right place, or the right thing in the wrong place, or the wrong thing in the wrong place. The proposal wasn't complete. They didn't answer the questions. They didn't stick to the guidelines. They came in too late, whatever. So if you want to actually get this money from this particular EAFP fund or any other donor that you're ever going to apply for, if you read the guidelines and stick to them, your chances of success multiply, because all these other people are going to be rejected because they didn't stick to the guidelines. You are going to stick to the guidelines forever and ever and ever. And therefore, your chances of success will be increasing and improving. So do this. This is the most important lesson I'm giving you today. If you forget everything else I told you, remember this, read the guidelines. In this particular case, it is very straightforward, but it has to be done. So you have read the guidelines, you know you're eligible, you know your project is in the Flyway, it addresses issues with migratory birds and wetlands, etc., etc. Now, as I said in the application form, there are many questions. So we're going to read all of these questions very carefully. What exactly do they want me to put in this question? And there's generally additional explanations what exactly the donor expects. And when you have read that, then what I said, you stick to them. You complete every section, clear, concise, and complete. If there are 2 questions in one question, it says who are your stakeholders and how are you going to deal with them in your project, then you answer both these questions, who they are and how you're going to deal with them. Don't just say who they are and forget about the rest. You answer all the questions correctly and completely. And again, this is going to help you make that first cut. A lot of people will only put in half of it. So they will go out, but you will be in. There are word limits given. In this case, for instance, it says maximum 200 words. Well, you have to stick to it. This is an online application, so possibly, probably after 200 words, it says cannot type anymore. But if you do this offline first, and because that is easier to share with your team members and your advisors, etc., then make sure you stick to it, because if you have written a lot and then you paste it in here and then suddenly after 200 words you get cut, then you panic because you think, now I have to summarize. So stick to the word limit from the beginning. And if they ask for 200 words, don't put in 20 words, because they have an expectation that you will need probably about 150 to 200 words to answer this particular question. So a rule of thumb is that if they ask for 200 words or 500 words or 200 or 300 words, stick to about 75 to 100% of that word count. So don't use too few words, because that's also not right. Definitely not use too many words. If they ask for additional documents, then do it. And of course, you want to go through all these things beforehand, so you are prepared. You can provide these additional documents. If you need reference letters from people, then make sure you have asked for them in advance. Don't wait until the deadline, and then you see, I'm supposed to have a referee letter, but I forgot to ask. So again, when you read the guidelines and all the questions, you will already know, this is coming. So I'm going to prepare for this. And then this is a tip for professionals, which you are now going to be professional proposal writers. Read the judging criteria. The guidelines actually say somewhere that the reviewers, the people who are going to decide who is going to get this money, they will look at the following criteria. And in this case, they give 5: practicality, feasibility, impact, accuracy, scalability, replicability, and innovation. These are the criteria that the guidelines already give you as an applicant, that they will use to define who is getting the money and who not. So when you have written your whole proposal, you've done your whole design, put everything in the right place, submitted all the other additional information that is being asked for, then go through it again and say, if I am a reviewer, is it clear that my project is practical and feasible? Is it clear that I'm going to achieve some really good impact with my project? Is it clear that I have looked at my science and that is all accurate? Is it clear that my project is scalable and replicable? And is my innovation coming out clearly? So you look at your own application with the eyes of the reviewers and the judges. You make sure that all these things come out clearly so that they don't have to dig for it and look for it, but it's actually really showing in the application form that you have thought about this and you are addressing all of these issues. So this is my tip, and this is, as I said, probably the most important one of this whole training today. Do everything that they ask you, the donors, because if you give them a reason to reject you, you're not helping yourself. If you do not what they ask you, or you miss something, or you have not read the guidelines, you're doing the wrong thing, then it will be easy for them to reject you, which is what you want to avoid. You want to give them everything they need so they can say, perfect project, fits all the guidelines, fits with all my judging criteria. Beautiful, I'm going to give money to these people. Tip number 6, remember that one. Number 7 is about the budget. Of course, everybody always talks about budget. Budget is actually not so difficult because the first thing you're going to do when you do a budget is read the guidelines once again. And in this case, the guidelines are very clearly identified in the application form, so you don't even have to go anywhere else, they're right there. And they say exactly what is eligible and what is not eligible. And then what do you do once you have read the guidelines? You stick to them. It's exactly the same as with the actual proposal. Read the guidelines and stick to them. They describe what is eligible. Equipment, travel costs, outreach materials, these things are eligible. And they actually have already broken it down to you. Transport, equipment, activity materials, venue booking, production of your deliverables, etc. So you can really fill that in very clearly. They also say what is not eligible. In this case, salaries and consultancies, not eligible. You only get $3,000. They want this money to go into actual project activities. So do not put salaries and consultancies in your budget. Stick to the rules. Of course, you know your maximum budget is $3,000. and they actually say, if you ask for anything over $500, you have to provide a justification. And they actually have a column in the budget that says justification. They also say you have to break down your costings between the unit price and the quantity. So you don't say, I'm going to use $500 on transport cost, or I'm going to use $500 on binoculars. You're actually going to say, I need to travel 500 kilometers. It will cost me in the bus or by car or whatever, $1 per kilometer. So my travel costs are $500. Or I'm going to buy 5 binoculars, they cost $100 each. So the total costs are $500. Break this down. They ask for it, do it. Then you make sure everything adds up. This is not an automatic, this is not an Excel sheet, so you have to do this yourself. And really a lot of budgets don't add up. You think this is the most simple thing to do? No, because people put things here, then they change their mind, but they forget to change it in the actual form. So they might change one thing, but they don't change the actual total amount or whatever. So always make sure it adds up. Always make sure everything you need to do for your project is included in the budget. And as I said, never, ever, ever include ineligible costs. These rules apply to you, all of you. There's no exception, otherwise it wasn't a rule. Doesn't say nobody can apply salary costs in this besides you. No, nobody can, nobody can. So what I'm going to suggest to you is do your budget first in an Excel sheet where it all adds up automatically, only then put it in the form. And if you change anything later, change it in the Excel sheet and then transfer it again into the form so that you make sure it adds up. Something we check, a lot of people get this wrong, so you will not, because you will have gone through this training and your budget will add everything up properly. All right, tip number 8. This is still about proposal writing. And this is now about abstracts. So your abstract shows up in basically very early in your application form. The first tab is about applicant information, it's about your details. But then already in the project background, it asks for your abstract. And this is because your reviewers and the judges, etc., will want to look at the abstract first. They will get this idea about what this project is going to go about. So what it basically should do, what you should include in your abstract is a serious summary. If you only have 200 words, you're probably going to need 200 words. And you're going to write one sentence about the context. Why is this important? And you say something about the flyway and the things that were mentioned yesterday about the problems and the context in this flyway. Then you're going to say, what is your project problem? What is the problem that you're trying to achieve? And what is going to be the purpose and objectives? How are you going to fix this problem? And what will be the new situation at the end of your project? You say a little bit about how you're going to do this, your activities and methodologies, very much summarized, generally. And you're going to talk a little bit about your findings and your impact. How will you use these projects to achieve your impact? So this is what you're going to put in your summary. And you're not going to copy paste from the different sections in your application form. You're really going to write this all afresh. And you're going to do this using the website that I'm going to give you at the end of this tip. What you're not going to do is include any new information in the abstract that is not mentioned anywhere else in your form. So you cannot introduce new information. Everything that's in the abstract should be mentioned anywhere else in your application form. You're also not going to include anything that is not strictly necessary in the abstract. Any additional information you're going to leave out. We're really going to stick to the key points. And you're going to make sure this reads very, very well. No spelling mistakes, no grammar mistakes. Everything is going to look really well because this is your business card. This is the first thing people read and they will have to be enthusiastic and say, all right, this reads very well. This is very logical. And this is the website I was referring to. It tells you how to write an abstract. And the key tip is, even though it occurs early in your application form, you write it all the way at the end. So you can only write it once your whole application form is finished, because then you know exactly what is in the application form, and you cannot add anything new. You will make sure you stick to the main points and you summarize it in your abstract. So even though it occurs early, write it last. This is the tip. I'm really sorry, my internet, I'm not really sure it's going to last because it's going into overdrive mode now. So if I go off like this, I'm really, really sorry if I do. I will try to hold on as long as I can. If not, I will wrap this up in another way. So I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to quickly go through the pitching. And you know, the pitching of your video. So you also have to do a 3-minute video. And again, the guidelines are clear what it should look like and what should be in it. And what should be in it is an introduction of yourself. And then again, the background, the problem, the solutions and the purpose and objectives, the methodology and your results. And you'll think, hey, that's easy because you've just did that in your abstract. You just wrote the exact same things that you're going to use for your video in your abstract. So as much as I'm going to say, do not read out your abstract in your video because that will be really, really boring, but make sure at least that you are consistent. What you say in your video should at least be the same, maybe in different words in a different way. Should be the same as what you say in your abstract. You can't say different things in your abstract about the same things, your background, your problem, your objectives, your methodology, etc. That you say different things in your abstract from what you say in your video. Because again, the reviewers will look at both of them and they say, here they say this, here they say that. That doesn't make sense. They don't know what they're going to do. They're not consistent. They're not specific. They're still confused. And I'm not going to give money to confused people. So my first tip is use your abstract to prepare the video because it has to be the same. But then my last tip is going to be, as much as you are going to do that, you're going to do a reflection of your abstract in your video. And you're going to say who you are and where you're working and why you're doing this and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, what you expect to achieve by when. All these things will come up in your video, but you also need to show passion and commitment. Why do we care that this is? Why should we care about these birds? Why should we care about this wetland? Why should we care about these people? So yes, you make your science and your data to make your case about, you know, what are the problems that you're going to work on, but also show us, you know, the beauty of it. And so, you know, show us the science, show us how beautiful it is, show us all the piles of plastic that are polluting the place, show us the little birds, you know, that we all love, and show us what's happening to them. Don't just have talking heads talking. And of course, I know I'm preaching to the converted. You all probably have done much more videos on social media and for your projects, etc., than me. But I'm just going to say it will help that where your abstract is sort of really clear and straightforward, your video shows the beauty and the passion and everything. And once again, turning back all the way to the beginning, the things to focus on in your video: science, society, and SEPA. These are the things that your people, the judging people, the decision makers are going to look at. Make sure these things come out beautifully in your video because they're part of your design. They're part of your project plan. They're part of your proposal. So make sure it's consistent. The problem is clear. Solutions are clear. these are the things we're going to do in terms of science, society, and SEPA. This is how we're going to present it. And the video could be like one of your first really innovative deliverables as part of the storytelling that you're supposed to do under your SEPA component of this project. Make it creative, make it really make us all want to go and say, yes, we want to save these species at this site. And this is with the people that we want to do it. These are the right people doing the right thing in the right place. Show us that passion. And so that we care as much about what's going on as you do. Sorry, I went a little bit fast in the end, but this is just because in case my power goes off, my colleagues can still do the quiz because they have the quiz and they know how to go about it. So if I just suddenly stop off here, which can happen any second now, please, colleagues from EAFP, please continue with the quiz as a final exercise of this project. While I still have the power, I just want to give a very short summary of the 10 top tips that we talked about today. So we talked about project planning, 5 tips. The first one was about the problem. Describe the exact problem. Ask why, until you know exactly everything that's going on in the situation that you're trying to address. Know everything about the problem. Who is doing it? Why are they doing it? Etc. And then, of course, don't make the problem that you're trying to address in your project too big because you only have $3,000 and 10 months. So make sure you focus. Don't overpromise. The second thing was about evidence and practices to define your purpose, objectives, methods, and activities. And you've done the jigsaw, so you know exactly what goes where in terms of objectives, purpose, methods, and activities. We talked about making your products and your deliverables fit for purpose. So if you do something very local, make sure your SEPA products are also local. If you do something very global, make sure your products are also global. And find your indicators using quality, quantity, and time, and use means of verification so we can see the proof and the evidence that you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. And use the exercises that the examples that I gave, and you can also look at the book and find some more information about this as well. Both about writing smart objectives and writing QQT indicators to measure your objective. And again, don't do this alone, work with your stakeholders, specifically the stakeholders that are really truly relevant to your project. Make sure you work with them as advisors, as partners, as beneficiaries, so you can achieve more and better impact. Those are my 5 top tips about project planning. And again, they apply to this particular project, but they apply to every project that you're ever going to write in the future. So remember this. Proposal writing, what did we say was the first thing you do? Proposal writing, and I actually wrote this down because I always use this in my trainings. And it says, read the guidelines. Always read the guidelines and stick to them. Make it difficult for a donor to reject you. Do everything they ask, nothing too much more because there's no additional information they may not look at, definitely not less. Make it very, very difficult for them to say, these people, we don't want to work with them. The opposite. You are so good, they said, these are the right people. We really want to work with them. Your budget, we said, stick to the guidelines. Once again, don't include anything that's ineligible and make sure it adds up. And again, this is really basic stuff, but it is so relevant. And if your project doesn't add up, it doesn't give you a sense of reliability or credibility. If we see that, we're going to give money to these people, but they can't even add up their budget, maybe that's not a good idea. And the last thing about proposal writing was about your abstracts. Abstracts are extremely important because
we nearly done. So I would just help to finish it. So yeah, we talk about the abstracts, which is the last bits, but it's most important to show the judges. So yeah, you have to also write them. Oh, I don't know what's the in the presentation because I don't have the PowerPoint. But yeah, it's you can write this in at the last. And the last two tips were about the pitching. So the first tip is to be clear and concise. And also you can, the last one is to show your passions, show the innovation in your video for pitching. The end of this, and I would like to invite Sewon to share the screen once more for the PowerPoint. Yes, so we have summarized the section by today, and we have the quiz, and we have Jaslyn being the first in the quiz. Yeah, but I'm sure today everyone learned so much, including myself. If I have attended this workshop much more earlier in my career, I don't think I will fail that many proposal writing and get more grants. So please follow up with us on our social media and our homepage for everything for the Youth Think Tank competition. You can just follow us by at EAFP. And then the next thing, next slide, please. Right. Okay. So yeah, and then for this one, as I said, this is the first training workshop. So we have two coming up. And after today, I wish that you remember what we have done. We are trying to do the summary news article and trying to do the editing of the videos on and share on our website later on, but it will take some time. So here I'm also sharing the link of the post workshop survey. Your feedback to us will be really valuable, and it also will be benefiting you because we are going to plan the second and the third workshop, and we are also adjusting from the feedback that you gave to us from the post workshop survey. So please help to fill in this survey as soon as possible, and also let us know how you think about these 2 days. And finally, we actually have like 10 minutes left, and yeah, I think we are done with the training workshop. But if anyone wants to share something, just share your ideas. Please also raise hands and switch on your webcam, and we would like to hear and what you think. Yeah. So Sewon, please, we don't need to share a screen. But yeah, we would invite you to also show your video and raise hands if you have some feedback now. Great. Thank you, Vince. And anything you want to say?
Nothing really much, but I really enjoyed the past 2 days. I'm actually working on, I'm really interested with shorebirds and wetlands. And this training workshop really gave me the opportunity to really think about the different problems in my community and how I can make a project that's going to be relevant to all the members of the community. So thank you so much for this wonderful training.
Okay, thank you, Vince. Any other feedback or comments, or say hi to everyone or bye to everyone is still good? I would also like to thank you for all the organizing team. They showed up themselves yesterday at the beginning of the section 1 of the workshop. But yeah, once again, I really want to thank for all their hard work. And today we also have George, Sura here, Sarwan, Choin, who are really doing a lot behind to make this workshop happening. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you so much for all of you, especially for you who are those who are sitting in for 2 nearly whole days for our workshop. So yeah, thank you very much for your participation.